what we're going to do, the same format that we always do, is I will do a prayer of gratitude, then we'll do a brief overview of what is energy healing, then because it's Saturday morning, we'll do a brief recap of yesterday's session, the Friday session, which is always kind of a bit of a setup for the Saturday session, the idea being that both sessions are on the same topic. So recap there, and then we'll dive into today's session. For today's session, I have many questions that have come in via email, and there may be a few more that come in from the group, so I'll be happy to address those. And yeah, and I have a little special treat to start everybody off with also at the beginning of the actual session. So thank you to being, for everything, for this live webinar, for our great healing group of brilliant souls who've come together for this event today, for being this, for being this, for being our collective, for being all the forms of our consciousness which heal, for being all the forms of our consciousness which perpetuate the flow of knowledge and wisdom. Thank you for everyone's ancestors. And as I say that, I'm really bowing down to the physicality of everyone, because it's through the DNA and through the ancestors that we have our physical bodies. And of course, this is a healing webinar. So deepest gratitude to the ancestors. Thank you to the divine in all of us for blessing our time together today, and for the opportunity to explore even more deeply into the fabrics of consciousness and the way they interface with the transformation process, which is really what healing is about. It's about going from one condition to a healthier condition. So that's what we're looking at, is how does consciousness heal? So thank you everyone for all of this. All right. Okay, so recap. What is energy healing? Energy healing is the process of focusing attention intelligently in such a way as to, wait, I'm just adjusting that slightly. Okay, good, better. In such a way as to promote evolutionary transformation for the physiology. So we're focusing attention. And of course, we know that attention is basically consciousness. And what we're focusing it on is we're focusing it on not just the symptom, which is easy to identify, but we're taking it, we start with the symptom and we work our way down to the seed of the symptom, or the seed of the imbalance. And that is somewhere in the ocean of consciousness. So part of what we're doing in energy healing is we're learning to navigate, traverse the field of consciousness in such a way as to very kind of concisely identify the seed of an imbalance. And we're using consciousness to then modify that seed to affect change in the seed of imbalance in order to give rise to a different effect on the surface. So consciousness does two things in energy healing, right? First, it's like an explorer. It's like the two hands, right? The left hand, if you're right-handed, the left hand's like the exploring hand, and the right hand holds you steady onto the higher level of experience. Left and right. And actually, just as I'm saying that, I'm just feeling a little balancing, and it looks as if light of awareness moving into the corpus callosum. It's interesting, it goes to the question from yesterday that I wasn't actually necessarily expecting I would get to, because it was such an interesting and in-depth question. It was about mental imbalances such as dyslexia. And she was saying that she knows that dyslexia runs in her family. Dyslexia is about seeing forms, even two-dimensional forms, from multiple directions. That's more of a right-brained effect, because the right brain is more spatial, and it comes at our experience from a more unbounded direction or angle. And when we're talking about something like reading or math, then that's a very left brain type of behavior. And so if the right brain, it's like we're looking at both the opening of communication channels between the right and left hemispheres of the brain. So we're right in that little central area, that corpus callosum area. And we're also looking at where the boundaries or limitations in that area reside in order to promote clear discrimination. Nice. I think, did we do a healing for discrimination yesterday? I kind of have a memory of it. Might have been in a report I sent out. It was. But this is important because yesterday we talked about karma and its effect on the finest level of expression of self, the finest level of feeling. I identify as the causal body. If we have like our bubble diagram or our dense physical material at the top and then absolute being at the bottom, then the finest relative is right there. And that we took a big, deep, long dive into the causal body yesterday. And we're looking at how karma, among other things, is the structure that causes the walls or little shapes to be portioned off within the great unbounded space of the causal realm in order to produce specific vibrations or effects. And those vibrations or effects are what cause the relative to come out the way it comes out. I'm just feeling like a lot of movement right now in that area. And one of the things that's happening is there are energies that are subtle energies that sometimes I refer to as 3Ms, morphic fields, morphic resonances, and subtle matter morphic fields, which act kind of like white noise, and they are responsible for blocking or stopping the flow of awareness. And the first thing that I'm seeing is those energies are releasing or dissolving at a causal level of the physiology, and this is affecting this corpus callosum area of the brain to support opening the flow of communication channel between left and right, and also bringing orderliness. And I just want to look at the orderliness, the quality of the cosmic administrator, if you will, and that's one of the forms of the causal body. And the cosmic administrator is kind of a universal form, which functions as a sort of ideal form, is an ideal structure for all types of administration. So where the boundaries preside, if we can is set up or aligned with the cosmic administrator, then that is coming in like a download, and it's establishing in the corpus callosum. So the flow of communication is this wide open and loving, and like two members of the same team, or mother and father, the relationship between right and left, and yet that cosmic administrator element is there in order to provide just the right boundaries in the right place to the right degree. And I'm just feeling that deep, deep inside the head. And for some people, this third ventricle of the brain, where we have lots of beautiful, very fascinating little administrative structures, including, of course, pituitary gland and hypothalamus, well known, but also it's very, very close to the whole dopaminergic system, and the appetite regulator is in there, and arcuate nucleus and other organs are in there. So that's the administrative, it's like an administrative center inside the brain. And one of the things that's happening for people is a releasing or a dissolving of toxins in the third ventricle. And all of a sudden, like the second, it's dawning on me that would be a place that toxins could collect. You know how leaves collect in the fall or in certain little corners or spots around town. And this, because it's a ventricle, it's like a little space. And so it's a spot where toxins sometimes can collect. So right in there, a matrix is establishing in this third ventricle of the brain that's like it's purifying. I'm asking I'm asking, what is the nature of that matrix? And that matrix, for those who are new, matrices are forms of consciousness. They're forms that consciousness takes, which are at a slightly denser level than the finest level of feeling, right? The finest level of feeling we talked about yesterday, that we get spaces and vibrations and forms of intelligence. But at a slightly denser level, we get these threads or streams of consciousness that connect everything to everything. And we think of them as meridians or nadis or just threads of filaments of being, and they can form together to create these lovely sacred geometrical forms. And at every node, there is an energetic structure. So there, it's a matrix that is representative of an element known as cosmic cleanser. So I'm seeing them both. I'm seeing at the causal level of creation, the cosmic cleanser as a hum or vibration of the causal field. And so it has a specific tendency, nature, and then it rises up and it can form itself into a more stable form, which is a sacred geometrical form that promotes or supports the establishment of a kind of natural purifying or cleansing support for the third ventricle of the brain. Oh, that's very interesting. Okay, so I wasn't expecting that. Ties in a little bit. We're just going on to another healing here. I haven't even gotten to either the prayer that I wanted to read to you or the recap from yesterday, but we're covering yesterday just a little bit as we go along. So we have, since we're at the brain and working, that was, by the way, that healing was for the dyslexia. And also, thank you to the brilliance and light and beautiful hearts in this healing session. That healing for dyslexia can go out through the threads or channels of consciousness into the field of the collective and support anybody else who also suffers from dyslexia. And I'm just looking. I'm watching that. What I'm doing. And I love sharing with you what I'm doing because I like you to see those inside mechanics, right? So what I'm doing is I'm kind of cluing in with the web of life. And of course, I'm doing that, as some of you who've been with me a long time know, through my astral body, because the astral body is that level of manifestation that connects in with the web of life. And I'm seeing everyone's hearts are like humming with this lovely energy of that sweet devotion to share that healing with the collective. And it's very interesting what's happening. Okay, we get deeper inside pictures than we used to. So what's happening is, because our hearts set up the initial condition to share the healing with the collective, what happens is, as a healing collective, we make a very big resonation. Remember yesterday I was saying that the magnetic field produced by the heart is 60 times more powerful than the magnetic field produced by other organs of the body, even the brain. So what that's doing is, as it moves out into the collective field through the web of life, it's actually activating the web of life, spinning it up, you could say, with the impulse from the heart, which is like fundamental. It's like the carrier of the healing. And then that goes out to the collective. And what it does is it appeals to the hearts of people in the collective who have suffered from dyslexia or other maybe similar imbalances that could be healed through this same process that we just went through, that we're offering. And so the hearts open, people's hearts open. And when their hearts open, they become receptive to their own healing potential. They become, when the heart opens, then one becomes more accepting or sensitive to the way in which their own consciousness heals them. And I'm seeing something it's like very sweet. It's very sweet. There's a lot of gratitude. Loving gratitude is flowing from the collective, and it's flowing right back into our healing circle that we've created, our healing collective. And as it does that, it goes right through us, like clear, like we're clear, right to the source of creation, right to the mother of the universe. So beautiful, so beautiful, so beautiful. Because the mother of the universe is a field of infinity, right? So when that love and gratitude flows into the mother of the universe, flows into the field of infinity, it gives rise to an expansion of the healing process. Oh yeah, one of the people here just said flow of soma. Flow of soma. Beautiful. Thank you. Okay, absolutely. Okay. On that note, I feel like it's a really good time to read this prayer. So, well, one of very dear, you're all very dear to me, but I just want you to know that this friend, a dear friend who's here on the webinar today, and such a dear friend, and he and I have been going back and forth. We're working on a protocol for a new program. I'm not announcing it yet, but I will be ready to beta test pretty soon, and I'll be sending out emails to a select group of my customers to be participants in a free beta test for this program. But anyway, very lovely man, and he wrote this prayer, which I thought was, and that's one of the things he does. That's one of the ways of our interaction, is he writes these beautiful prayers, and I thought I'd read it because it ties in so concisely with the feeling of today's session. He makes his prayers to the Mother of the Universe, calling her Ma. Dearest Ma, we appreciate you in all your many forms, and thank you for manifesting as the beautiful, incredibly useful vehicles we call our bodies. We can only pray that we make use of them fully in the way you intend. We fall to our knees in gratitude at the many life-sustaining miracles, such as breathing, pumping blood, digesting food, and producing hormones, which take place inside our bodies every single day, automatically, without us ever having to think about them. Please forgive us for any ways in which we block or hinder the miraculous self-healing properties of the body. In the modern world, one of the ways we appear to degrade the functioning of the bodies possesses the healing potential is stress. So that's one reason I wanted to read the prayer, because I like that he mentioned stress. Our ability, because that's something we can address, right? Our ability to accumulate stress seems to grow exponentially with each passing day. Oh, that's a lot of growing. We are aware that sometimes in the deconstruction cycle, a little stress may be necessary to propel our evolution ever onwards, but much of the stress we manufacture for ourselves appears unnecessary and non-life enhancing. So dearest Ma, you have gifted us with many wonderful behaviors, meditations, and tools to dissolve stress, and yet at times it still seems to get the better of us. So we ask you humbly in this powerful forum to gift us with a healing which will lessen our ability to create stress in our bodies in the first place. And then, if it's possible and it's your will, to instill a de-stress matrix which will begin to automatically dissolve the unnecessary stress without us even having to place our attention on it. Just like the other natural processes which take place in the body every single day. We feel that this healing will assist us in doing more of your great work out there in the world. So we ask you all in earnestness to consider this prayer on behalf of the whole of humanity, past, present, and future. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Okay, so I realize that that's partly what we just did. We have created a matrix that's an expression of cosmic cleanser. And for anybody who's not sure what cosmic cleanser is, that matrix is there, but let's make sure everybody gets a download, a direct download of the nature of cosmic cleanser. Everybody, it's downloading. When I experience it, it contains essences of aromas such as eucalyptus, menthol, camphor. It's got that kind of ultra clean frankincense, ultra clean quality to it. And that's just downloading for everyone. And for each of us in this healing session, we may need, or our bodies might need to use this cosmic cleanser and this cosmic cleanser matrix in various areas. You can put it anywhere there's stress in the body. So We have one lady who got some glass in her head from a car accident. She can put it there and it'll help the body reject the glass, like push the glass out. For some people, liver. Yeah. For some people, the liver, kidneys. For some people, there are toxins in various other locations in the digestive system. I'm seeing some people's circulatory system. I'm seeing, for some people, this cosmic cleanser matrix wants to go into the mental body, particularly subconscious and unconscious levels of the mental body. And for them, also for you also ancestors, because there are certain like little mental habits or little mental patterns that our self-speech gets into, which are not self-supportive. And they're habits that were born and supported over centuries by the ancestors because they were considered expressions of humility. And humility was considered a really good characteristic for a human, for somebody to possess, but not really self-deprecation, the fine line. So that's where the cosmic administrator comes in, because the cosmic administrator knows exactly where do we hold the difference between innocent humility, right? Natural humility, and being kind of like pushing oneself down or breaking oneself down. And again, I'm feeling a beautiful flow from the heart coming along with that. And it's like the counter resonation to the self-deprecation. It's the resonation from the heart that naturally heals and balances and brings those energies of self-deprecation back to zero again. It resets the system. And the area that's being reset is partly subconscious and unconscious levels of the mental body, but also there's a structure that kind of runs through the whole system from very more dense level to very fine level. And that is, for years I used a word for my friend Nick, superconscious. But really what it is it's the part of the system, it's that portion of the causal body that's responsible for a sense of self-love, self-honoring, self-protection, self-appreciation. And it gets reset is what happens. So when it gets reset, it doesn't go off into some kind of vanity, conceit, or narcissism. It just stays in that very sweet, humble, precious, like in the prayer, you know, he's talking about, where is it? Is it this one? Yes. Oh, how miraculous our bodies are. And to be able to really appreciate them, because particularly for people who are on like a kind of spiritual path, which that accounts for probably most of the people in this healing webinar, there's a tendency to very much favor the development of consciousness and expansion of consciousness, and think of the body as maybe kind of illusory or secondary, or it's just growth, you know, it's at the material level like that. But really the body is just such an amazing ally. It is such an precious, it's so precious, because it's through the body that divinity has the opportunity to have the human experience. And again, most of you already knew that, but I'm saying it also for the ancestors, because even though we've told the ancestors that before, for some reason they continue to get it in layers. And also every time we speak it, every time I speak it, and we're all in that space together, understanding that it's the human experience that allows divinity to be glorified at a relative level, then it goes to a broader spectrum of ancestors, or it goes deeper into the system like that. I'm seeing them. I'm seeing them back to ancestors who traveled on the seas, who immigrated to the States, and those who didn't. Beautiful. Okay. So I promised, oh good, we've got questions coming in here too. Hey. Okay, so here's a really interesting question because I've been doing some from the email. So here's one that's coming in right now. By the way, anybody who's new, if you want to ask questions, the upper left-hand corner of your screen, there should be some controls that let you adjust your audio and also ask questions, and all questions will be handled anonymously. Okay, so as she's saying, as you're speaking of downloads and matrices, I'm wondering if the kaleidoscopic light filaments that wake me up at night sometimes are downloads. Okay, that's a really good question. Anybody else having kaleidoscopic light filaments? No? Oh, a few? A couple? Okay. So I tend to get them in the early morning when I wake up. So that's why I think it's an interesting question. And my understanding of this effect that comes on the closed eyelids is that it's a flow of energy through the kidney meridians. So there's certain meridians that are running through the body, and when the energy is flowing up in a really like flushing up through the body, that they end at the eyes and they make this visual impression on the eyes. So that's been the way I've explained them. Of course, what you're experiencing might be a little bit different from what I'm experiencing. It's possible. Certainly downloads can come, especially if you're a very visual person. They can come in the form of visual impressions. And the nature of the pineal gland is to interpret divine wisdom or information coming from the field of being into images of various types and varieties. And so it can happen that a person can get various types of visual images. Sometimes my experience with the pineal gland, however, is that the images come in more like known images. Like, for example, you know, if you're supposed to avoid an unfortunate happening, that you might get an image of, oh, I really, really just want to go to the beach today. You know, I want so much, I'm going to call my boss and tell him that I'm sick and I'm just going to go to the beach. And sometimes we do that, you know, sometimes it can be done. And if one does that and then avoids an unfortunate happening back at work or something, you know, so a lot of times they'll come in like that, like visual images of things that we know we're familiar with in the relative. But they can also come in the forms of like numbers. Sometimes I see series of numbers or Sanskrit letters or sacred geometrical forms. Everything that comes is knowledge and knowingness. Everything that comes is knowingness expressing itself in some form or another, even illness. Even illness, when the body, because your body's the great ally, and it will slow you down in one area so that you put attention in another area that needs it at the time. I'm just feeling into the group because I know what I'm feeling is that for some people, the areas that hurt are, it doesn't feel like there's a logic to it, and it doesn't feel fair, and it also doesn't feel as if there's anything to be done about it. And so there we draw on a little bit recap from yesterday, the energy of Lord Narasimha, which is a form from the causal field or the causal realm of self, which has the ability to balance out the impossible. So activating that form of Narasimha, one of the great incarnations of Lord Vishnu, who can undo any impossibility. And what I'm seeing happening is that Narasimha energy, again, is coming in like a download, and it's communicating to the heart area. Because the heart is the overarching administrator We talked about that more yesterday. For years, I seemed to circle around to healings for the heart. And after a while, I'd circled around so many times, I thought, geez, healings for the heart is just like a cliche. I've done it so many, we've done this so many times. But then I read this great article from the lady who was in the last webinar. She's got 2 birthdays this weekend, so she can't join us. But she sent me this fabulous article, which I will be sending to everybody, by the way, on this, in this session. And it talked about how the power of the heart and how highly sensitive and responsive the heart is to every little feeling that flows through us. So the way the heart beats, the magnetic field, which is produced by the beating of the heart, is 60 times more powerful than any other part of the body. And the way it beats is a response to the feelings that are going on in the physiology. It's the way we feel. And the way we feel is based on beliefs, right? Like if you believe that something is horrible and scary, then you will respond with fear. And if you believe that you're witnessing the deconstructive side of the evolutionary process, then you may respond with excitement and enthusiasm. So the heart can respond, and like 12 different people can respond 12 different ways to the same event. So we have some control over that. When we get down to beliefs, we have some control. But the beliefs are based upon the constructs at the causal level, or the finest level of feeling of the physiology. And that's why in yesterday's session, we spent so much time really diving into the mechanics of that area. And it's very interesting. I actually have a webinar coming up where we're going to go even deeper. So that should be interesting. Yeah, anyway, that's the question for dyslexia. And the question for, oh look, here's another question. Dear Dorothy, dear river of knowledge of Mother Divine. Oh, you are so sweet. See, I can be the reflection of that part of you. I love that. I love that, because what we're doing is, by reflecting off of each other, we are re-establishing a broader concept of who and what we are. And that's what the healing process is all about. It's about having oneself defined in one particular manner, and that self-definition breaks down. And then at the total breakdown position, everything gets reset back in the field of being, right? And then one is able to emerge from that space of being renewed, reset, and established in a frequency of expression which supports highest health. Anyway, so thank you. I reflected back to you. So dear Dorothy, dear river of knowledge of Mother Divine, can we do deeper look and healing for constant habit of being late for years? Left person in feeling not gaining goals and desires. Blessing for you, for all. Love from Croatia. Thank you. Beautiful Croatia. Okay, so this is partly, okay, let's just look at it. So we have the symptom. The symptom is being late with everything, always running late. And part of that is connected to a feeling of, oh, I don't have enough time, right? There's a belief underneath that. There's not enough time. So every time I have a little window, I'm like pushing and stretching that window as big and wide as I can stretch it and try to cram as much stuff in as possible. And that always leaves me running a little bit late for my next window. So there's that. That's also, so according to Ayurveda, it's a kapha characteristic, that people who are vata tend to be early, and people who are pitta tend to be right there on time, and then people who are kapha tend to be running a little bit late. And that's interesting because also to maintain the more kapha physiology, one has to fill the empty space of the stomach a little more full with each meal, right? So there's a little bit like that too, like filling the space, just filling everything up very full. Also, what I'm seeing underneath that, so those are a little bit beliefs and habits that we're identifying right now. What are the constituents of the imbalance, right? So we've got beliefs of like, there's just not enough time to do everything, and habits of kind of like stretching every minute as full as possible, especially if you're a mom, which this lady is a mom, you know, so she's got the children and she's trying to juggle all these different things all at the same time. And then underneath that, there's something a little bit more fundamental, which is a sense of needing to be as much as you can be for everyone all the time. And that ties into the self-love, self-protection, self-care element. So what's happening is I'm seeing a little bit flushing, and this is very, very interesting to me that this is where I'm seeing it, folks, is I'm seeing the flushing kind of like going down the sides of the body like that, down the sides of the torso, and even into like the muscles of the body. There's a kind of a flushing out. There's some, it looks like adrenaline, it's affected. There seems to be a little bit of an adrenaline element also associated with that, because every time we're rushing or we're late, there's always that adrenaline rush that goes along with it. And there's something just outside the reach of my conscious awareness, which I almost picked up twice. Let's see if I can grab it. Yes, pain bodies. Pain bodies, because there's that feeling, it a little bit justifies, oh, I'm not quite up to snuff. I'm not quite up to the level of as good as I'd like myself to be. I'm not coming up to my expectations. So that's good. That's good. So we've got that identified. I feel when we get to that level, it feels like that's kind of like the seed, like we're getting down to the seed of it. You know, there's a feeling of resolution, like when you come to the end of the cadence of a beautiful piece of music or something where it's like, that's it. Because I had to take quite a dive for that one. So pain bodies. Interesting. So I'm feeling the pain bodies in the area just below the heart, in this kind of region of the upper digestive area. And it's interesting because that idea of the filling the stomach full and filling the time full came up just a minute ago, but in those organs, there are some pain bodies. Too much full. And you know that a person gets a feeling there sometimes if you're really late and the adrenaline starts to rush right there in the stomach. It's like, oh, I'm late, you know. So we need to reset right there. Resetting, clearing, and pain bodies always come with attachments. So that means there's a little bit of the attachments are related to a slight egoic element or structure in the physiology of like, because I'm important. In a way, it's like it makes me feel important, right? Because I'm needed and I'm supposed to be a certain place at a certain time. I have an important life. You know, if I don't have an important life, it doesn't matter if I'm late. Nobody even cares. Nobody even notices, right? So here, if I'm late, yes, because it's important. And I'm she says she lets a person feeling not, you know, letting people feeling down or something. And she feels like she's not gaining her goals. She's not gaining her goals. But remember, you're already totally, fully fulfilling the goal, the cosmic goal of your life, simply by being in a human body. Because every breath is universality to individuality, back to universality, back to individuality. We're massaging the relationship between individuality and universality with every breath. We're massaging the divine dialogue, or that flow of transformation that goes from the relative, it breaks down to the absolute, and then it's reborn anew, it's reset and reborn anew as a greater wholeness of self, that every time we go through the digestive process. So you don't have to do anything. Everything you do, like your personal goals for your life, your wishes, desires, and dreams, or dharma, we could say the dharma, that is going to be fulfilled, but it's like an extra blessing on top of the fact that you're already there. You're already there just by being human. It's not easy to be human, right? Like, being human in this time that we're in. We did a big healing for the time that we're in yesterday, by the way. And that was very exciting, and I encourage people to go back and look at that. Anyway, so clearing now. We want to clear this layer. We did a analysis of what's going on with running late. And so now we want to clear that. And so when I offer that analysis into the field of pure being to see what being comes forth with, what I get is something that feels like a calm ocean. We have our individual self. We have individual self, intimate relationship with cosmic eternal self. The cosmic eternal self, it's so big. It's so big. Have you ever noticed, this is for my lady here, have you ever noticed that sometimes you're rushing, and you're pushing and straining to get somewhere on time and end up being late? And then you get there and you find out, oh, everybody else was late too. So, right? How many times? I did that so many times. And after a while, it's like, why am I giving myself a heart attack to get to this place on time, right? It's no, because it's like everything has no choice but to conform to cosmic time. We have no choice. You have no choice. You're on cosmic time. Welcome to cosmic time. This is where we are. And we're going to just be here. We're going to be here. So yeah, sometimes it happens, you know, that we run a little late or something happens. Oh, my children will never forget the time I forgot to pick them up from school. Oh, I don't know. I was busy cleaning or something. I don't know. Making them dinner. And I'm like, hey, I made them dinner. Where are they? Oh my God, they're still at school. You know? So, you know, it happens. It happens. It happens. It happens in life. You know, you do. How many times in a person's life do they go pick their kids up from school? Like thousands and thousands or something? Anyway, so that calm feeling is like a liaison between, it's integrating the relationship between the self that lives within the constraints of space-time and within the boundaries and limitations of schedules and responsibilities, and the aspect of self that is utterly, completely cosmic. And I love it that your question is bringing this out to the surface, because it is a shift in perception. And it's absolutely, this is how perfect this question is. We just did a healing for the third ventricle of the brain, remember? And to establish the cosmic administrator, laying out the way in which information flows back and forth between the two hemispheres of the brain and all the administrative functions of the third ventricle. Now, this question brings us to an underlying resonation that goes with that, and that is the integration of perception of self as, yes, I'm my individual self, yes, I have to be somewhere at a certain time, yes, I'm responsible for this, that, and the other, with the cosmic self. There's a part of you which is like so unconstrained by the body and is in the heavens always. There's a part of each one of us that's like looking at our life from the perspective of the cosmos, the planets and the stars and all the different structures of intelligence in the whole universe. There's a part of us which, as big as the universe, is looking in at the part of us that's, you know, watching the clock and being somewhere on time and fulfilling this responsibility and that. Okay, beautiful. So that is integrating. The gap is closing, so that wherever you are on earth, whatever you're doing, there's that sense of the eternal presence of consciousness, which also ties into the causal structure that we talked about yesterday that came up God bless a friend from Utah who brought up the concept of the Vajra. The Vajra is known as the lightning bolt of consciousness, and it's a form. It's a form of the causal body, and it has this ability to bestow full awakening or full enlightenment in a lightning flash. And it's very interesting because that Vajra, it also has it's also called Dvorje in Buddhist philosophy, but it's interesting because it kind of goes with that deep, cool, calm ocean of stability, which came out as the counter resonation for this question here, this concern of being late, because that calmness is like everything's happening on its cosmic time, and then the bolt of lightning of consciousness that comes and it strikes, and it opens everything up to a whole nother level of perception. So it's fascinating to see those two together, activating together. It's very interesting. Thank you for that. Okay, we got more questions popping in here. So I definitely want to honor this question about the skin too. So, we've got plenty of time, but we've got like a half an hour, so we're doing good. So several people, and it's interesting that it's Europeans, and it's also interesting that I've heard recently from Europeans that certain practices like genetically modified farming practices and chemtrails and things like that have been sort of coming to Europe in places where they weren't previously. So there are at least 3 people in Europe who have recently asked me a question about the skin. So what can be done to improve skin conditions? Seems to be running in her family, so everyone there seems to be suffering. Eczema, psoriasis, dandruff, acne, skin irritations, etc. Also a kind of a mystery condition on the legs where feel like little pinpricks itching in the skin in different places, and the itching moves around, but it doesn't leave any visible marks. And she feels it also sometimes other parts of the body, and maybe healing for healthy skin would be nice for everyone. I'm looking at everyone's skin, looking at it physically, looking at it energetically. It's interesting, recently I read an article about a new organ that was discovered, one of the biggest organs in the whole body. And it's like, how did we miss that one? It's a layer of tissue that's just under the skin that's like a kind of a spongy, it has sort of a spongy nature to it. I'll have to go back and look that one up because I don't remember the name of it. Please forgive me, not being a doctor. But it acts as a kind of a buffer, so that if you get press on the skin or something like that, it's right under the skin, and it makes it so you don't like automatically just give yourself a bruise by doing that. And it's the whole body. It's the whole body. And so I feel as if there's a connection between that. No, it's not the fascia. Somebody's coming in on the chat here saying fascia. No, the fascia is a tissue that connects, that sits between all the different organs of the body. Oh, and the fascia is a little bit different, I think. Anyway, sorry. I guess I have to go look it up. Or maybe my team / my husband could go check that out if you want to, if you feel like you're not too busy doing other things. All right. But the thing about that is there are gaps and spaces there, because it's kind of like spongy a little bit, and it's just under the skin. And what I'm seeing is there seems to be something in those spaces that's not supportive of healthy skin. And I'm wondering if our cosmic cleanser matrix would be good, or what I'm getting is not so much the matrix itself, but it's tying into a bunch of different things from yesterday, but as more of a light medicine, that the cosmic cleanser can come in as a light medicine. Hello. This ties into our healing from yesterday. What's happening is a stabilization of various qualities of life, which are important for life to be lived at a really high level of experience. Truth, cleanliness. I'm trying to remember. They're the four legs. If anybody out there, any of my Vedic science people, they're the four legs of the bull of Dharma. And inside you, the bull of Dharma has all four legs. And it's slowly, one yuga at a time, they get cut until all that we're left with is the leg of truth. It's the only one left. I'm trying to remember them. I was going to double check that this morning, but I didn't have time. I was rushing. I was rushing around, trying to get on time, right? Anyway, truth, cleanliness. Oh, well, now that I'm standing up here, they're further away than ever. So we won't worry too much about them, but we can take them as a structure anyway. Even if I can't remember the words of them, it doesn't matter. This is when I need my son here, because he remembers all these things. Oh, mercy is one of them. Cleanliness, mercy, truth. There's one other. Anyway, thank you. So grateful. So they're all part of the 32-point matrix, which can move into the tissues of the skin, along with cosmic cleanser as a light resonation or energy hum from the causal level of the physiology. Yesterday, yeah, ahimsa, right. Also got a lady from Europe saying ahimsa is one of them too. Yeah, nonviolence, yeah. This, because the skin sits between, ourselves and our world. So it fulfills so many different roles. And it's any time a person feels like vulnerable or unprotected or unsafe, that experience can come out in the skin. So the skin, and the other thing is, excuse me, as long as we're looking through, this part is easy for me, is to read the energy frequencies in the skin. Remembering all those Vedic terms, oy. But anyway, so also the skin, what happens is a lot of times the frustrations and irritation come out the skin. And what I feel happening is, as individuals, so many of the people who are having these conditions are here specifically to uplift our world. They came, it's their dharma, they came to this earth because their goal was to be part of the solution, basically, to be here providing a level of existence which upholds and uplifts highest values for everyone on earth. And due to the sort of systemic spread of the energies of Kali, which we talked about yesterday, in the hearts of men in Kali Yuga, because of that presence, as an individual, it feels like an ant trying to lift a mountain. And I think that over the course of time, that builds up. And even for some people, because I know that I've got a little child who's also having some skin concerns right now, that what happens is, again, it's a soul who's been already so many times back and so many times and so many times coming back to do this work, and has come back again thinking, okay, now the world is in a slightly more enlightened place. Now I can do my work, and now we can really make some headway to creating a quality of life force on earth that supports everyone's ability to live in a balanced manner, to balance those four goals of life, right? Those four aims of life that we mentioned yesterday. I think I remember them as kama, atharva, moksha, and dharma. Oh, I remembered them. Artha. Did I say artha? What did I say? Atharva? Artha. Thank you. I can't do this without you guys. We're keeping everything clear, and concise. Thank you. So I described them yesterday. We do it as a collective. This is where the collective comes in. And the skin is like a kind of a collective for the body, sort of, in that it's everywhere. So it's, you know, it's where the senses of perception are, it's where the vocal mechanism is, it's where the digestive system is, it's where all the muscles and bones. It's like the skin encases everything. And there's a big microbiome. There's a microbiome element to the skin too, because we have a certain amount of like healthy bacteria and so forth on our skin also that act as part of our first defense. So it's a very collective level of self, and it's the level that the world sees. It's a collective level. It's where we interface with the collective. So there, the healing that we just did for individuality and universality is helpful, but further, we need to eliminate those discordant feelings from, and I see them as kind of under the skin. They get stuck in those little spongy, yes, pockets.
So the skin is where we interface with the collective. Does that make it like the causal body, like a direct physical representation? And the pores in the skin, how do they relate to those spaces that have those resonations?
Thank you for asking. So the question is relationship between causal body and skin. Actually, the way I see it, thank you for the question, is that the astral body is a little bit more at the junction between individual and the collective, because that's where we interface with the web of life. And all the threads of consciousness, all the cords and threads of consciousness do have a relationship to all the points of contact or entrance through the skin. And even the hairs, right? The hairs come out the skin like little threads of consciousness, eyebrows. Thank you. It's a great question. And so I'm just thinking, though, it's such a good question. If this healing that's going on for the skin can also go for the astral body, and if there's a relationship between the discordant feelings that are stuck in the tissues of the skin and the discordant, if that's also possibly in the astral body, we're checking. Thank you. Checking the astral body. I'm seeing for the most part, everyone's astral bodies are good, but for those who are really having serious concerns with the skin, no, there are the discordant feelings are sitting there in the astral level. So that is easily healed by just going to the energy that's the foundation of the astral body, which is found at the deeper level, the causal level of physiology. It's this form of nature's intelligence that forms the cord of light that runs through the body. And of course, it comes to the heart area and it spins out and it forms the astral body. So right there, this is a healing for everyone's cord of light. Everyone's. And what's happening is there's a coordination between the upgrade that everyone got for the heart. And even if you weren't in on yesterday's webinar, it doesn't matter. You still will get that healing. You'll get the recording and you get the healing too as well. So a coordination between this upgrade of wisdom and intelligence for the heart and the cord of light, which comes in and it strikes that heart area, that heart cord, and it spins out like that. And that's another level of coordination. Again, we're bringing together this great sort of ocean of cosmic perception with that form of the Vajra, which strikes an upgrade, a natural, spontaneous, very fast upgrade to the field of consciousness, to consciousness. So it upgrades perception. And that's going in the junction between the naga that runs through the physiology and the astral body, which is like a bulge in the naga or something. Beautiful. And just feeling it. Oh, look at this. Thank you. Bless you. It's called the Interstitium. Interstitium is the name of that new organ. Yes, I remember it now. Interstitium. Well, I see it written here. But when I see that word, I'm like, yeah, that's the one that was in the article. That's the interstitium, is that organ that's under the skin. Beautiful. Thank you. I appreciate that. Okay, so Now, going back to the skin itself, I just want to clue in with the actual physical skin and see what we can do to make sure that everything is all right there. Another thing that's affecting those little pinprickle feelings on the legs come from an imbalance in the microbiome. So the microbiome also needs healing, and that microbiome can also receive the same healing between the microbiome's astral body and its core, and the cord of light for the bodies of the bacteria, each one at a very fine level. And I'm just seeing it's a very interesting awakening for your causal body, because in order for this healing to go through you to your microbiome and to eliminate, it's kind of like a fine underlying infection, if you will, in the skin. That's what it looks like to me. So in order for it to do that, our causal bodies have to activate in a particular way that they've never activated before. So we're getting a chance to kind of divide up the causal body in a new way. And what I'm seeing of it, I'm doing my best to describe it, but it's completely brand new here for me. So the causal body it's got a kind of a softness, like this new space, which is able to promote this particular healing for the body's microbiome. It has a softness, and it's able to work systemically, obviously, through the physiology. There is a sense of almost a cathartic release going on, very deep compassion. It's so interesting to me that sometimes when the densest imbalances are leaving the physiology, there's also this cosmic intelligence aspect witnessing it, which is just filled with compassion. And we get a juxtaposition between the individual self, which is letting go of all this stuff, and the cosmic self, which is just holding and loving and tenderly caressing and supporting like that at the same time. It's a mix, and that's the energy that's going in, is creating the counter resonation for the imbalance that was in the microbiome. Beautiful. So many questions popping in right and left here. Okay, let's see. The hypodermis is beneath the dermis, which is beneath the epidermis, and it's used mainly for fat storage. Oh, thank you. That's from my beautiful husband. But just letting you know that it's called the Interstitium, if you want to know. And then he's got another little paragraph about the skin, but we won't mind. A quick healing for hearts from past romantic relationships. Oh, thank you. Yes, and we need to do that because that's another question that came in here on this. So we've got it coming in on the question box, and we've also got it coming in here on the emails. And this lady's saying healing for hearts from past romantic relationships, and this lady's saying, and I think that we can put them together, for physical pain in the reproductive organs for men and women. Sexual relationships are not pleasurable, physically painful, emotionally. She loses herself in others. For the entire collective, it seems there's a lot of single people, and there's a lot of stress in that, and sexual frustration involved. You know, she says she loves knowing that men and women can be engaged in more harmonious ways, but it seems like a lot of people aren't enjoying that. And also, if it's related to go into female reproductive, very intense cycle experiences with women's cycles. It all comes back to the heart anyway, because the heart's like the administrator or the dictator or whatever. It's the it's the boss. It's the boss of the body. So I'm just looking. Okay. Right. So what we're looking at, the seed, like to get to the seed right at the off. The seed is the connection between the way our dopaminergic systems function and the heart, the way it perceives and understands and remembers. So the heart also has a memory function in it. You'll get the article. It's very interesting. Memory function of the heart seems to be karma. There's always a little bit of karma connected. If we've been involved with somebody and then become uninvolved with them, there's going to be this karmic element. So we have to get down into the causal level of the physiology and look at how that karma is functioning down there and what needs to be addressed to adapted with it. Feels like it has hooks, or the karma is like hooking in hooks and cords that kind of go into the area that I mentioned earlier, the superconscious, which is the part of self. It's the part of your consciousness responsible for your own ability to self-love, to self-appreciate, to self-protect, etc. Anytime a person goes through an experience like that, of getting so involved with someone else and then being ripped out of that experience, there's that feeling of, how could I have ever been so uncareful with myself? How could I have ever, not been aware that that was going to hurt so much? So in the superconscious, there are also little threads, little egoic threads in there. And there's also, I would say, seeing some kind of little ancestral judgments too. Little judgments of like, well, you should fill in the blank. You should be perfect. So that's the first thing to go, are the judgments. And as these judgments are clearing, and like I said, they're coming from, their origins are in ancestral structures, that is helping clear karma for the ancestors. Because it's not good karma for the ancestors to be judging you either, right? Or themselves or anyone. And so if we can clear the karma for them, you save them from going through an experience of having a painful breakup. It softens it for them. And it softens their hearts. And again, that tendency to judge, that's also a little bit hard in the hearts of the ancestors. So turns out it's actually a healing for the hearts of the ancestors. How many generations? We've got different people and different numbers here, but looks like the averaging out about 11 generations, averaging out about 11 generations. And it's interesting, as this healing is happening for the hearts of the ancestors, and it's clearing judgments and expectations and assumptions and habits of judging and justifications for judging, all this, also the mental body gets involved. They're clearing those justifications. There's a big release of discordant feelings. There's a release of patterns that are associated with self-deception. Patterns associated with self-deception, especially like being harder on other people than you are on yourself, kind of like that. So that's also clearing. This is for the ancestors. And what I'm feeling is I'm feeling the energy moving through the physiology, our physiologies and their physiologies, in kind of waves that are going at about a speed like that. It's doing it, and then it's doing another layer and another layer. And what that tells me, what I infer from that energy structure, when I see the energy move like that, is that it's something that's been embedded and set in the system for a very, very long time. And it's not something that's going to come out completely smoothly all at once. We have to take it out in layers. So that's rolling. And I can feel it really having a restructuring effect on this area of the physiology, the upper vagus nerve area, the whole esophagus, trachea, throat, vocal mechanism, all this immune system. And that's going to also help the people with skin conditions, because that's partly an immune system issue. So we're doubling back, helping everybody. So the stress connected to and associated with relationships builds up around the fact that, particularly this lady from Europe is asking about sexual experiences, sexual relationships, that sex is a way of directly accessing the dopaminergic process or the dopaminergic system inside the brain. That's something you can do on the surface that causes that brain system to just explode open and flush the system full of dopamine and like that. And that's because that makes the body feel good. And for people that don't have a sexual experience when it doesn't feel good, it means there's some blockage there. So we're looking into that dopaminergic system. Also, I mentioned before, third ventricle of the brain, which is right next to the substantia nigra and the ventral tegmental area, which is where the dopamine is produced. That third ventricle also has both an appetite regulator for food, but it also has a regulator for sexual experience right there. So we're right on that as well. There's little tiny organs in there. They're important. They're administrative. So this is kind of like going back and a tweaking and a refinement of the work that we did earlier with the cosmic administrator. And again, I'm feeling a very nice increase of intelligence in the heart, because the heart's intelligence dictates how these other systems function. So the heart feeling full, that's it. That's it. This is why my sweet lady in Holland, that you haven't had an experience that was really satisfying, is because when the full heart connection needs to be there, and it needs to be you need to feel safe with the other person, emotionally safe with them, emotionally safe. When you find someone that you feel emotionally safe with, it will be different, because then the heart will be able to adapt. It will be feeling good. And then when you get together with that person physically, the heart won't create an impulse that shuts down the dopaminergic system. Trust. And know that trust is based on self-trust. Not that you don't trust yourself, but there could be little areas or little spots where greater trust could be. Okay, we still have more questions, you guys. So here's another question. This is a great one. Can you relate your discussion of the relationship between digestion and bone processes from yesterday to the 13 stages of digestion in Ayurveda? Do the first 6 stages, which involve breaking down the food by Jatar Agni, and the 5 Bhutagnis, correspond to what you were referred to as digestion yesterday? Yes, first of all, yes. And thank you. And I'm grateful that I got this question more clearly defined. Thank you. And then do the last 7 stages, which involve the sequential formation of tissues, including bone, ashti, correspond to what you refer to as the processes in the bone? Right. Yes. So yesterday I talked about the relationship between the role of the skeletal system is as a support for the digestive system. Because for various reasons, the bones are just like an amazing resource. They're an amazing resource in the body where they're producing various hormones and all the constituents of blood, as well as being a holding tank or a holding ground for lots of basic minerals that the body needs, such as calcium, potassium, magnesium, etc. And here's another interesting point about the bones, is that different bones produce and store different materials. Yeah, so it's not like every single bone stores calcium the same or produces the same, it has stem cells that produce the same elements. Like my arm bone will produce a different kind of energy for my body, or a different kind of basic fundamental material for my body than, say, my shin bone. It's very interesting. So when people have bones replaced, right, if they have to replace a joint or something, whatever it was that that particular joint produced then has to be carried by the next joint, you know, by the, like if they have a knee replaced, then the other knee has to do the extra work, because the knees have their own special thing that they provide for the body. Yeah, so body's like it's an amazing thing, amazing. So yeah, the body, just as a little recap, the bones represent the structuring element, and also kind of a orderliness also in the physiology. And sometimes in our culture, traditional cultures, we associate some of these qualities with the male energy, and the male energy builds up. It builds up to the relative. Brahma, you know, breathes, and the relative manifests. Whereas the breaking down process is more like nature. Nature breaks down, Mother Nature breaks down. It has a kind of a chaotic element to it, more of an organic, not as orderly, breaking down the old order quality to it. And so that's the digestive process, is the building up and breaking down. The Agnis, by my understanding and experience, they represent that primordial light of being that is present. It's the first light. It's the first expression of creation, fresh out of the absolute. You know, the Big Bang. It's like that the very first popping of the Big Bang is just so light. It's so much pure light, one big bright chakra like that, exploding open. And that first light is Agni, and that first light has its seat in the physiology at the causal level of creation, and the very deep sort of inner sanctum of what we know ourselves to be. So it's like you can think of it like a star chakra or something deep inside the soul, deep inside the being, the very finest level of being, as an unquenchable light, the unquenchable light of Agni. It's the fundamental level. And then it's present. I got it. It's present at each step of transformation through the digestive process. So the first step of transformation is in the mouth, right? And that's the first spot where we start to break the food into smaller pieces like that. And at each point along the process, Agni is present. And it's that piece of the transformation where we go down into the absolute and then coming back out again. And the Agnis that are responsible for breaking down the food as we're going in, and then the Agnis that are responsible for the rebuilding as we're coming out. And the Agnis sit right there at that very, very tender and significant junction in the transformation process. And I would think from this, I'm thinking that the Agnis then are also present when other types of transformations occur, such as the transformation that occurred today in the upgrading of our superconscious and the superconscious for our ancestors, so that people can just be so much more open to accepting their own essential self, essential true self, and cosmic self. And it's interesting because I see we're over time, but I just have to tie in this one thing. The Vajra is considered the hardest thing in the universe. And it's translated roughly as a thunderbolt of consciousness. But it's interesting because a thunderbolt is also a light form, right? It's like a great flash of light. And so I would imagine that the Vajra also has an intimate, and this is just me inferring, but it has an intimate relationship to the very most primordial form of the deepest levels of Agni of creation as well. Okay, right? The first flowings out from the absolute. It's very concentrated. The whole universe, right? And then it just starts to open. And when it's only this big, the whole universe, it's hard. It's hard like that. I wouldn't be surprised if the Vajra is another way of even describing the very earliest forms of Agni. Possibly. We need to look into that. See what the ancients said about it. Anyway, thank you everyone for being with me today. It's been really exciting. Oh, thank you. Thank you. people sending in thank yous. I love you all so dearly, and it's so exciting to do these sessions. And the next ones coming up are going to be really fun. And please watch out for my next webinar or so when I offer this new protocol in beta. I will announce it in the newsletter. So I hope everyone's getting the newsletter, and you can check for it there. I'll also try to remember to send out emails to anybody I think would be especially interested. And I love you all dearly and look forward to hearing from you and being with you again very soon. So thank you. Thanks for being with me. Bye.